To be honest, I was never in a hurry to try business class on Amtrak's Northeast Regional. But when I found myself A, about to get on a train out of Philly one morning, and B, in possession of an upgrade coupon about to expire, I thought I'd give it a try. Roughly 2 hours later, I got off at BWI Airport with one thought in my mind. Amtrak really needs to fix their business class product. Business class can be found on all Northeast Regional trains on the Boston to Washington Northeast Corridor, usually at the rear of the train. It can also be found on a lot of other Amtrak trains outside the corridor, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to focus on the regional. Passengers can either book a business class seat on this train or upgrade to it from their coach accommodations, either through a full payment, a last-minute bid to upgrade, or a coupon like the one I happened to have. I only paid $6 for this luxurious trip, since I bought my coach fare on sale, although, full disclosure, staff at 30th Street told me my ticket was too cheap of a fare class to qualify for the upgrade coupon and only let me use it because they felt like being nice. So what did I get for my $6, coupon, and special favor from Amtrak's employees? First of all, peace of mind, because I could reserve my seat. I love Amtrak, but I cannot stand their unreserved seating in coach. The later you get in the long line to board, the less likely you'll be to have a good seat. My wife and I have had to sit together in the cafe car on previous trips, so for this ride, it was really nice to have a reserved seat waiting for me in business class. I could muddle about the station and get my Dunkin' wrap for breakfast, then get in line behind everyone else, knowing I'd still have a nice window seat waiting for me on the train. It was definitely different to see seat numbers along the aisle in an Amfleet. And that leads me to my second thing I got, my seat. In this car, business class seats were arranged in a 2-2 configuration, with ample legroom. Amtrak doesn't specify exactly how much legroom they have on their website, and I didn't have my tape measure with me, this being a fairly last-minute booking, but it felt a lot more generous than the 39 inches one gets in coach. Every seat had a footrest, and some came with a shared table. Lastly, my seat came with a free non-alcoholic drink of my choice, which I had to retrieve from the cafe car. They didn't even make me show my ticket for it. As far as I can tell, they have a 1 drink per passenger policy, regardless of whether you're traveling from Philadelphia to BWI or Boston to Washington, which is kinda weird. Even economy class on long flights has multiple drink services. And that's about it. It wasn't a bad ride by any means. Indeed, it was short, comfy, and worth what I actually paid for it. But thinking back on the trip, not to mention looking at its $80 price tag booked 1 week in advance as of writing the script, there's a decent list of things this product did not include, and I understand why nobody I've read or spoken with has ever really hyped it up. Missing thing number 1, lounge access. This isn't that big of a deal for me, and to be honest, it's understandable. If you book first class on a domestic flight, you don't automatically get lounge access with that. And from what I've seen, the Philly Amtrak lounge is nothing all that special. Missing thing number 2, clarity as to where I was supposed to wait for the train. Up until very recently, business class was at the back of all trains, but now plenty of Northeast Regionals are operating in a push-pull configuration. I wasn't sure which end of my train I was supposed to board on. If mine was really supposed to be the nicest seat on the train, I would have wanted more clarity on that. Missing thing number 3, service. When you buy a ticket in coach on a mid-length domestic flight, you're either given pretzels or nickel and dimed for a $10 tuna sandwich. But when you fly first class, you're given priority drink service, a wide selection of snacks, and sometimes a whole meal, all complimentary. There really isn't anything like that in Northeast Regional Business Class, and even the drink service is self-serve. Missing thing number 4, any substantial difference from coach class. People want to pay to sit in the front of a plane, because the back sucks. You've got about 30 inches of legroom back there, give or take, and you're sharing the row with 5 other flyers. But on Amtrak, you get 39 inches of legroom in coach, every seat is an aisle or window, and the seats are comfier than most other passenger trains around the world, let alone air travel. Seriously, ride an older Chinese high-speed train for 8 hours, and tell me your butt doesn't miss the Amfleets. Amtrak coach class is, comfort-wise, on par with first class on a domestic flight, so there's very little incentive to upgrade to a slightly better version of that. But hang on, you're asking, what about all the business travelers who want a business class experience? Well, there's an entirely different train for that. It's time we acknowledge the Acelaphant in the room. Badumts. Acela trains are faster, make fewer stops, and are almost entirely business class. They don't have coach at all. Their seats in business class aren't as comfortable as on the Northeast Regional, the legroom isn't as good, and you don't get a complimentary beverage, but you still get reserved seating, and you'll reach your destination up to an hour earlier, due to the Acela's faster speed and limited stops. So if this is a better option for actual travel time, surely it costs more than the Northeast Regional Business Class, right? Nope. Looking at prices 2 weeks from today for trains from Philadelphia to BWI on February 5th, 2025, Acela Business Class starts at $44 and goes to $55, while Northeast Regional Business Class starts at $46 and goes up to $80. For a morning trip from Boston to Washington on the same date, this Northeast Regional Business Class ticket is more expensive than the Acelas before or after it. Pricing algorithms are wild, aren't they? The Northeast Regional travels beyond the Acela's range to places like Virginia and Springfield, Mass., and it does stop in a variety of places on the corridor that the Acela doesn't, so it is the best business class option if you're traveling to any of those places. But other than that, this product has very little going for it. In other words, Northeast Regional Business Class is kinda broken. So how do we fix it? Well, I have 3 different ideas. Number 1, European Business Class, Amtrak Edition. Often for domestic flights on European carriers, their first-class product isn't a special seat. It's just an economy seat with a blocked middle seat and special service. Perhaps Amtrak could adopt this concept by using their superior comfort as an advantage, offering business class travelers a guaranteed empty pair of seats in coach, as well as a cafe car voucher for food and drink. Existing business class cars could then be converted to coach, increasing Amtrak's carrying capacity on the Northeast Corridor. A downside to this model would be extra work for the crew, who would have to block out enough seats for every business class reservation at the train's origin and make sure nobody else sat there. Existing business class also offers the perk of exclusivity. It felt special, sitting in a different car because of my upgrade. So overall, I'm not sure how much I like this idea. Number 2, downgrade, not upgrade. Instead of creating a product to compete with the Acela, its own brand, Amtrak could invest in a product to compete with Flixbus. As an armchair observer with no actual industry experience, I feel like a slower all-stops train would be better suited to broke college kids than suits in New York or DC, and Amtrak could take steps to capture this market. In this crazy plan, business class would be eliminated from the regional, and these cars, along with some coach cars, would be converted to a more compact seating, akin to a commuter train, and turn today's coach class into a premium product of sorts appropriate for a slower, frequently stopping train. Now, while this would potentially open up the rails to more people, implementing it would be a massive, expensive, and highly controversial move, cutting into the comfort and ease that Amtrak sells itself on. So maybe it's best to keep advocating for consistent regional rail along the whole Northeast Corridor and hold off on this idea. Before I get to number 3, I want to quickly thank all of my wonderful Patreon supporters who helped me buy a new microphone. Unfortunately, it is not in use yet because I accidentally shipped it to Massachusetts. So, working on that, soon I'll have a new mic. Back to the regularly scheduled program. Number 3, the most obvious choice, make business class nicer. Not crazy luxurious, Acela First Class already offers a premium experience along the Northeast Corridor, but make it a bit more frilly. How do we do that? Well, there's another corridor train that we can take a look at for this far to the south. Yeah, I'm talking about Brightline. For its Miami to Orlando services, Brightline offers 2 classes just like the Northeast Regional, called Smart and Select. Smart is pretty similar to coach class on the regional. 2 seats across from 2, snacks and drinks for purchase, and overall much more comfy than a domestic flight. Then there's Select class, which includes a bigger seat like the regional, but also lounge access, a 2-1 seating configuration, and complimentary drinks and snacks. In the grand scheme of things, Select is not all that different than what I wrote on Amtrak, but it does have a few more perks, and it doesn't feel like an afterthought. Amtrak could create a product like this with their business class simply by allowing passengers into lounges and giving them vouchers for the cafe car, enough to buy a half-frozen banh mi, a drink, and a few snacks. Maybe a conductor could even take food orders and make deliveries in the business class coach. This would still be at the same price point as Acela, but would feature a distinctly more comfortable ride than the high-speed train. Well-endowed passengers would have a choice between speed and comfort, and regional coach passengers wanting to make a poor bid up to business class would have more incentive to do so. In my opinion, this is the best option if Amtrak wants to save its non-Acela premium product. But what do you think? Is business class ever worth it on the Northeast Regional? Have you ever tried it? And if so, what was your experience? What would you want to see in a premium product on a slower train? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you all next week.